Bonjour et bienvenue à PHLY Sixers. Je m'appelle Kyle Neubeck, and I promise that's the last French you'll ever hear me say. But in honor of Nick Batum, we are here with you today. Devon, I'm passing it back to you, the real host, but Devon Givens, Derek Bodner carried on without me.
Viva
on
la
Wednesday
France.
night.
Viva la France.
See, this is
France,
why I take
indeed.
the easy way. I just get the guys celebratory croissants. That's much easier than trying to learn French on the fly.
Welcome to the PHLY Sixers pregame show here on a non-game. We're going pregame because this pregame is carrying into tomorrow, into Saturday, into Sunday. Man, we're excited to be here. Welcome to the podcast with you as you see it on our show here. Now we're part of our logo, the playoff logo. Answer the bell playoffs 2024. We can finally say that it is the playoffs for the Philadelphia 76ers, locking in the 7th seed. They get ready to take on the number 2 seed New York Knicks beginning on Saturday, 6 o'clock. And it's going to be a fun time. So we'll have you covered throughout the playoffs right here on PHLY Sixers podcast. These guys will have you covered in a lot of ways with the writing and, of course, the shows that we'll have for you. But we got to start off with a preview in general here on the show. We're off on Friday. We're back Saturday for the post-game show. So we want to try to squeeze everything in on this Thursday edition of our podcast to get you guys ready, to get ourselves ready of what this matchup is going to be. Because, Kyle, I mean, the fact that, of course, everything played out the way that it did, but it certainly sets up things perfectly with the Atlantic Division opponent, New York Knicks. This one is going to be fun.
Yeah, so by the way, I had a longer French opening, and the reason I was worried about going longer is that it almost sounds like I'm making up the words, that it's like an English speaker's version of French, but saying I am fired up translates to je suis excité. Which is
It
like,
does sound very
that does
made
not
up.
sound real. But look,
You should talk to Joel and Nick Batum.
I'm working on it.
There,
Listen, there are some
right.
various reasons for trying to pick up some more French. I would say this, and I want to echo many thoughts that you guys had last night.
Yeah, no, we spoke for like 5 hours straight.
Yeah.
So if you have any thoughts you want to get off your chest
that I
on about
thought
last
were
night's game,
salient.
Thanks everybody for hanging out with us last night. Go ahead, Kyle.
Of course. I think the most important thing coming out of last night is just like, there's real hope. Like there's belief. Like the number one thing that could have happened last night was not the end of the season necessarily, but the end of anybody feeling good or feeling inspired. And there was that long stretch. Listen, I felt it in that building last night for the first 2.5 quarters, basically. The psychic damage that this team has caused their fan base over the last 5, 6, 7, however many years is real. Like that was a building that for a long time did not have belief that things were going to go the other way. And it went the other way for a lot of different reasons. Number one, for the first time in perhaps recorded history, the Sixers got role players to carry them while their stars were stinking it up. We've seen so many other teams have that happen to them, and they had it happen to them for the first time ever.
Not only that, but hat tip to Matt Carey, who mentioned this on Twitter. Like, Miami is that team where they will randomly get a 20-point outing from Nick Batum to steal a win that they had no business winning. That does not happen to the Sixers.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and I wrote about this in my follow-up story after last night's recap, but by the end of that game, first 2 quarters, disaster against the zone. We would have been spending the next 3 months talking about, well, who cares? They can't beat a zone defense. They're never going to win with Joel. You should trade them, blah, 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 blah.
Those comments were in the chat.
Believe me, I popped in from time to time to see what was going on, mostly doing like a mental health check on you two and seeing how everyone was doing because you guys are in the middle of a marathon. But I think the important thing is by the end of the game, they beat the zone in every way you're supposed to beat a zone. Move the ball quickly, shoot open threes, and critically, and I noted this for Joel Embiid specifically, but certainly the whole team, they killed them on the offensive glass. You go back on half-court possessions last night, half-court misses. The Sixers rebounded 44.1% of their misses in the half-court. So Miami won the battle on pure volume and offensive rebounds, but the Sixers absolutely destroyed them on the offensive glass. Critically, that one by Joel in crunch time for the N1. And so all the hallmarks of teams that have beaten the Sixers over the years, like the mental toughness to weather that storm early in the game, the adjustment by the coaching staff and how they played and where guys are being set up, and the conversations that are being had between Joel and Buddy Hield, Nick Batum and Buddy Hield, Tyrese Maxey and Cam Payne, I don't think I said this to you guys last night. Cam Payne was cited by probably 3 different guys after the game as somebody who had a positive impact on that game, hit a single 3. That's the only stat that he registered in, I think, 3.5 minutes. But a bunch of guys were saying like how engaged he was, how, he's seeing things on the floor. He's passing that along to Tyrese Maxey, to some of those other guys. And I know this was a theme of what you guys talked about on the post-game show last night. But to win a title, it takes everybody. And everyone's role is not the same, right? If they're going to win, Joel Embiid has to be MVP level guy, number 1 option, playing more like he did in the fourth quarter. But to deliver him to that moment, they needed Nick Batum's best on both ends of the floor. Buddy Hield didn't shoot well, but he's being a better decision maker. They had Tyrese Maxey collapsing the defense. Kyle Lowry coming up with that clutch steal where he pokes it out, I believe it was Tyler Hero's hands, sends them running the other way. And then much smaller guys, literally and figuratively, in Cam Payne's case, who even if they're only getting 3.5 minutes of play, we've seen the Sixers lose playoff games because of the 3 minutes that Joel Embiid steps off the floor and somebody comes in and it's deer in the headlights. The team identity falls apart and they can't get it done. So it's such a cliche, and you hear it all the time throughout the year. Like, you have to stay ready on the bench. And I think it's to the tremendous credit of not just Cam, but all those guys last night, other than Tobias Harris, who we're going to get to at some point. Those guys were locked in, ready, and no matter when their number was called, to respond when they needed to. So I thought that was a great showing of mental toughness as much as anything else last night.
Now, that being said, against better teams, you have to play better.
Yes.
Like, as you get farther and farther in the playoffs, the margin for error slips and slips. If this was quite frankly the New York Knicks, I don't think we're talking about a great comeback blowout and mental fortitude. You're talking about a team that was put away in the second quarter because they weren't prepared to play. They have to be better. Now, the good news is, and I was very happy when I looked this up this morning, Miami played more zone defense in the second quarter than New York has played all season. And that's not hyperbole. That is literal fact. There are statistics that will quantify that. And look, yeah, they adjusted well. But if you give Spo 7 games, I had a concern that they would find a couple of other wrinkles to introduce that would cause the Sixers to slow down. And the fact that New York doesn't do that, they have certainly other ways to impact you defensively, including a lot. I'm really curious to see where they put OG and how they're able to get Tyrese Maxey going. They're a very strong defensive team, but they do not, almost under any circumstance, use zone. And I'm breathing a little bit of a sigh of relief for sure, because that was bad. That was real. Like, I was stunned that they were so ill prepared to handle what was going to be an obvious Miami wrinkle that they threw out there. I was a little stunned that Miami came out in the third quarter. Like I said, Miami threw more zone out at the Sixers in the second quarter than New York has played all year. Then they came out and played less than half those possessions in the third quarter in zone, and I was shocked.
Yeah.
Now Miami did come back and play a lot of zone in the fourth. But that time the Sixers had built a run, a little bit of confidence in themselves.
Guys were with some real shooting momentum at
the
that
fact
point.
that Spo went away from what was working so well to start the third, I was stunned by. But they absolutely all played better to a man. Every person on that floor, from star to role player, played it much, much better, and none more so than Nick Batum.
And the Heat were up by as much as 14 when they finally started to open it up a little bit. And as the game was going on, since you popped in on the show while we were doing it, we were talking about how they keep turning the ball over. They had the 10 early turnovers, and it was a disaster. But Miami was not hitting their shots. And we kept looking at each other. We're like, they're going to start making these threes. So the Sixers need to clean this up and stop turning the ball over, because Miami is not going to continue to miss at the clip that they were missing. They started making those shots. It got to 14. So for them to eventually rebound and get back and figure out the issues that they had. Luckily, it was early when they were down 14, but they still had so much time to come back into that game. They had the entire second half to do so. And one of the people that we brought up during the halftime was, while I was talking to the people, Derek ran out to get the pizza and bring it in, was discussing with the people because there was a question about Lowry on the floor and so many different things of who didn't need to be on the floor and was hurting. And my thing was Buddy Hield didn't play good in the first half. You saw how quick Nick Nurse pulled him out of the game. And we were discussing, if you're turning the basketball over, why are you not putting someone else with some ball handling skills there for at least this is what we talked about. When the rotation shortens in the postseason, you have specific moments, specialty players to come in and do certain things. And that's where we got into the campaign discussion at halftime as to why his number was not called. Then it was called for that 3 minutes. Not only did he hit the three, he also ran a side pick and roll with Joel Embiid where his pressure after the screen was set, while he didn't initially give the ball to Embiid, he drove right. They had to go with him because he was so fast. He was going in your direction in the second half. He drove right into the defense, and they had to respect it because the speed was so fast, and you had to cut him off. So that leaves Joel Embiid. Now, he pitched it back to Embiid. They ran another dribble handoff, came back around. Then he pitched it to Joel, and Joel hit the shot after that. So even though he only made the one shot and didn't have another stat line, that pressure right there and that defensive pressure, which we talked about, Derek was the only thing that worried about with campaign is his defense because he is so small, not a great defender. He played well, and that's where you have to have team, where your number is called. Paul Reed was 3 for 3 in his time on the floor. Campaign 1 for 1. Paul Reed had the alley-oop from Buddy Hield. So that early connection in the beginning of the season where they were able to rock and roll the way that they did with that pick and roll, that symmetry still seemed to be there, even though they didn't have a lot of floor time together. All of those things matter, and we've talked about it many of times. All right, these guys are having a bad night. Why are the others not stepping up and filling up and picking up the slack here and in those points? Well, Nick Batum did that. And when he did do that, Joel Embiid stepped in later on to make sure that he carried things home as best as he could to help out Nick Batum. And that's exactly what you're going to need. And that's why we got credit last night from people discussing Nick Nurse and his adjustment to the zone, the substitution pattern by bringing in campaign, taking Tobias Harris out. So many of these things matter when you have a better team like New York now in this series where the margin for error might be very, very slim, where you have to be quick on the adjustment to make sure that you make the right call when that call is needed.
So boiling down what you said, that 3 from is why the fuck campaign in.
That's right. That's right. Exactly.
Shout out to Mrs. Batum last night for riding for her man.
That's right.
I really appreciated that. That was awesome.
We needed that from her last night.
Oh yeah,
because now she's the favorite. Now the Sixers
she's
fans
like the
are
inverse Anna Horford.
Oh, they love her now after that. But no, man, you absolutely need that going forward, where you have to have team. And Vince had a super chat last night. Our boss Vince, and Vince said it, where this team, of course, has a different feel to it, and it might just be the fact that they approach things differently of what they are doing on the floor. And it's team. It's not just the individuals that we look at with Maxey and Embiid.
And look, Batum personified that, right? Because I believe you guys said on the show, if they would have gotten 7 points out of him last night, it's like, okay, Nick Batum did his job. He knocked down a couple threes, maybe made the free throw or one layup here or there, but he's not there to carry the load. But that was the assignment, right? Like Miami's zone morphed throughout that game, right? There were times when it was a 2-3, but I thought there was quite a bit of 1-3-1. Yes. I didn't go back and fully rewatch the game quite yet.
These games are kind of weird, aren't they? Because on one hand, that was the biggest game of the year. On the second hand, the moment you woke up, it's like, all right, Knicks.
Gotta move on to the Knicks. But yeah, so Miami's sitting in a 1-3-1, which the whole point of playing like that is you're taking away, you're saying, we will give up those open threes. You have to be willing to take them. And while it sounds simple, it's like you don't want to go overboard and be like, Nick Nurse was a genius for doing this. Like, it was very important that they had those conversations at halftime. Like, look, in this design, Joel's not going to be able to get the ball if you guys don't take open shots. Like, you have to drive that message home. It's a very simple thing. But when those guys are out there, and especially, I said it last night, I thought Tyrese Maxey looked like a deer in the headlights for a good part of that game. And he said it himself. I was too passive. I'm going side to side. Being able to have those important conversations at halftime, but not just have the conversations to then execute them was great. I don't know if this came up on the post-game show. Another example of coaching staff and their message translating on the floor, and frankly also Nick Batum's intelligence. That final block he had on Tyler Hero, he said after the game, they showed him in the huddle on it must have been a tablet or something to that effect. They showed him a video of that exact set that they knew Miami was going to run. So before they got into it, he knew what was coming. He knew what he needed to contest. He knew the spot he needed to get to. And so Nick Nurse mentioned in the lead up to this game, like, look, we've been scouting and doing prep work for various playoff teams for quite a long time. Maybe not Nick himself, but certainly video staffers, assistants, player development guys, et cetera, the people who are not in the day-to-day of managing the rotation and practices and what have you. And first big test, the biggest game of the season, it seems that they aced it because they were able to, look, we said on the show, I think Eric Spoelstra is the best coach in the league, personally. Nick and the Sixers were able to adjust to what Miami threw at them in the first half to the point that they overcame a double-digit deficit. And then when it was close and you had to value every possession, get a stop, get points on the other end, they nailed it. So good job to them. And I'm very excited. As we say, we're going to preview Sixers-Knicks and then spend 15 more minutes on Sixers Heat. I'm very excited for what we're going to see in New York and South Philly.
Well, look, I mean, you have not been here. You did not get a chance to talk about that game, so I think it was right. That was, and we joke about it a little bit, but like that was the biggest game of the season. It's weird to be here and like, why are we spending so much time talking about it? Because it was a freaking huge game. They lose that game. Not only is everybody panicking,
it's a death march.
Yes, that is a brutal.
And then how they won it, who won it, and that was the Nick Batum piece of it. And also looking at some of the stuff was he's pointing to the stat sheet when he's on the podium. And
I don't care about this.
Yeah, exactly. I don't care about this.
To be fair, though, they needed those 20 points.
They needed it, but he doesn't care about it. He said, be prepared because this is not going to happen again unless it happens in the flow of the game, that it happens that way one more time. But we all know that's the type of player he is. We know that. That's why we were pissed off in the first half when he's making the passes that we're accustomed to him making, not being afraid, not being passive like Tyrese Maxey was, and being afraid to throw those passes. They were overplaying Joel. You saw Jimmy Butler cheating on the backside from the weak side, coming to the strong side to try to take away things, and he tipped the basketball or got the clean steal.
Batum had one turnover in the first half where Jimmy is sitting on Joel's hip with Bam, and he still threw the pass. Yeah. And I was like,
but that's
brother, what are you looking at?
And that's the thing we praise him for, because he's not afraid to throw the pass and do it. Maybe he didn't get it high enough, but you also have to anticipate that. But that said, he settled down, looked at the film. They talked to Buddy Hield at halftime. They need to shoot, and looking at the tablet during the timeout. And even on that play where he was hustling and moving side to side laterally and getting around Bam and make sure that he can get and stick with Tyler Hero, he still had to trail and recover since he went over the top and still get a piece of that block on Tyler Hero's shot and give them that opportunity to do what they did going forward. And that's why we spend the 18 minutes talking about him and not yet previewing the Knicks, because
people are so excited about that game, and
you started the show off with some French conversation and preview to begin the show, and that was necessary because of him.
Listen, having been there, it's a reminder of why I love doing this job. Like the adrenaline that you feel being in that building. Like whatever way it went, I would have been able to tell an interesting story about what happened, what's going to happen, what the future looks like, all that. But just the highs, the lows, the emotions, the seeing Nick Batum, who frankly most of the time is a very flat, even keel, watching him get that block and then scream in excitement coming down the side, like that's what basketball and sports are all about, man. That was awesome.
Rick Sacks?
Yeah. That's funny. That's the new Nick, right? That's the new one coming in. Before we move on to the Knicks, when we get to our next part of the segment, when you talk about the range of emotion, and I know we all discussed it because I asked you when we got there. Again, just seeing that play one more time last night after I went home of when the 0.3 of a second and they tried to inbound the ball and Tyrese and Joel are just trying to figure out who's going to get it.
I said a few colorful words at the
What the hell are you guys doing? They're mad at it. They said a few colorful words to each other and then hugged it out. And that was. I watched it again last night. I'm like, man, they're so lucky. It was only 0.3 of a second left on that clock, because that was definitely. out of bounds, and the Miami Heat folks did see that. So we'll get to the Knicks here shortly, but range of emotion for sure.
First, we want to make sure we tell you about allergies. Yes, allergies. At this time of year, my allergies go crazy. I've been in this very studio complaining about
this
my
pollen
sinuses.
is kicking my behind.
And
I'll
it
say
will
that.
kick my behind right until June. First step in countering allergies is to understand what causes them. So what are the leading causes? Pollen from trees, grasses, and weeds are a primary cause of seasonal allergies. Symptoms flare up when the pollen you are allergic to is in the air. Allergy symptoms usually appear shortly after exposure to the allergy triggers. Symptoms, which may seem similar to cold symptoms, often include itchy, red, and swollen or watery eyes, sneezing, nasal congestion, and a runny nose, scratchy throat and coughing, brain fog, which again I will use every time I forget something on this show. It's a very convenient excuse. Call me the Doc Rivers of podcasting. Itchy nose, skin or eyes, headaches, or a cough. If you're feeling sneezy, runny, or itchy, it might be pollen allergies, which can make you feel pretty miserable, but there are ways to get relief. Sign up for Rite Aid Rewards emails at riteaid.com/rewards to receive email pollen alerts for your area. If the pollen count is high, try to stay indoors. Keep windows closed and run air conditioners as needed. Remove shoes and coats near your door to minimize tracking pollen inside your home. And take a shower before bedtime to help wash away pollen from your skin and hair. And then there are over-the-counter options available to you at your local Rite Aid if you need more. Try a nasal rinse to help flush out your nasal passages. When symptoms are flaring up or when you know that the pollen count is high, try antihistamines, which there is a Rite Aid brand, or you can get Claritin as a name brand. That's personally what works best for me. 1 to 2 weeks before pollen allergies are expected to be high, try a nasal corticosteroid like fluticasone. Probably butchered that. Not a doctor.
That's all right.
Still not enough relief? Ask a Rite Aid pharmacist if a different type of allergy medication like a decongestant might be necessary. Visit your local Rite Aid today. Stock up on allergy relief or catch up on immunizations for RSV, shingles, and more. Walk in or schedule a vaccine appointment at riteaid.com.
All right, and this show here today is brought to you by our good friends from the Bet Parks app. And if you play some wagers on last night's game, you probably hit. Maybe if you had the over on Nick Batum, you definitely hit for what the number that he posted with that 20 and the 6 made threes last night. Phenomenal performance by him. But you can also get ready for Saturday's Game 1 matchup against New York, where already New York is a 3-point home favorite against your Philadelphia basketball team. So if you're feeling up to it, you already have the app on your phone like I do. Go ahead and go to the Bet Parks app and get ready to place a wager on that game. Throw a little bit down there because you feel good, even though Philadelphia, not so good against New York in the regular season, 1-3 in the 4-game series against them. This is when it really matters. So if you feel good, if you feel like, hey, I think the team is on the roll, they've now won 9 games in a row, Bet Parks app is the spot for you. Get in the zone with Bet Parks Sportsbook app. Money is in the moments. And you also have your baseball team. Final 3 games of their 10-game homestand. They are 5-2 at home during this homestand through the first 7 games. 3 more to go against Chicago from the AL. So they're coming into town, and you still feel like, hey, the baseball team, before they go away, maybe they'll sweep this squad. You can also, beginning tomorrow, for them, hit the Bet Parks app. Win big with all-day action. Win with your first $10 bet and earn $125 in sports bonus bets. You play for fun. You love to win. You bet. Download the app and play along with us. Must be 21 or older. Please gamble responsibly. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Okay, so now maybe we should talk about the series that we told people we were going to talk about on the headline of the show. That feels appropriate, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I guess initial thoughts on the Knicks, and because I feel like in my conversations with some of our readers, our listeners, my friends, the people around me, it still feels like the Knicks are being discounted as like a legitimate team in the Eastern Conference, where it's that lagging effect, right? We see it with players all the time, where it takes younger ascending players some time to get the respect. And because the Knicks have been, I'd say, lost in the wilderness for a while.
My whole life.
Maybe not my whole life, but most of my lifetime they have been. It feels like their reputation, at least in Philadelphia, is lagging behind what their performance has been this season. I mean, this is a team that, one, has a guy that I don't think he's going to make first team All-NBA, but he's a guaranteed All-NBA guy. I think locked in at second team at worst in Jalen Brunson. I think since they brought in OG Anunoby, the results when him and Brunson have been available and they've had most of their guys healthy have been just almost unspeakably good. And look, it's a Tom Thibodeau team. They play tough, physical, hard-nosed basketball. In many ways, they're the sort of team that has given the Sixers problems in the playoffs. They're gonna kill you on the glass. They're gonna never let up on the defensive end. They're just, it's the level of persistence you get from New York for 48 minutes, and in many cases in overtime, when their best players are going to be playing 45 minutes under Tibbs. I just think it is a team you should have a healthy respect for. And I'm not sure people really understand how good Jalen Brunson is now. Like, he played at Nova and people are familiar with him. He had some good moments in Dallas in the playoffs. He even was very good last year. He's gone up even another level this season.
All-NBA.
And that assignment, whoever, and it's going to be a committee like we saw against Jimmy Butler, right? But it's going to be a committee of guys guarding him, because you can't just throw him one matchup the entire game. He will figure it out and he will find ways to beat you.
Yeah, and you alluded to it, but with Brunson and OG on the floor, and we're not talking about a super small sample size here. We're talking about almost 1,300 possessions. They have a plus 24.4 net rating. Now, we just made a big deal about the Sixers with Embiid and Maxey on the floor. That was like a plus 11.
Yeah.
So plus 24.4 net rating in almost 1,300 possessions, 1,273 to be exact. 127 offensive rating, which ranks in the 99th percentile. 102.7 defensive rating, which also ranks in the 99th percentile. Some of that does come down to shooting variance. For example, the Knicks are out shooting opponents 39.8% to 31.7% from three-point range. We talk about this a lot, but a lot of times your defensive effort shows up in frequency of three-point attempts more than it does the effectiveness of it. So I think there might be a little bit of Jedi three-point defense there. They're also shooting about 10% higher on long mid-range jumpers. Now, they're an elite mid-range jump shooting team. Like, we can talk about that at times. I think that one is a little more of skill-based. Like, for example, the Phoenix Suns are going to outshoot you from mid-range because they have some of the world's best mid-range shooters.
Right.
Brunson has sort of entered that conversation, so you would get that. But there is certainly, I think, reason to believe it might be like a plus 18 or a plus 16 quality, not a plus 24, because nobody's a plus 24. That being said, regardless of how you rate it, they have been elite with both them on the floor. And I think since January 1st, since the new year, they are 20-3 with OG on the floor. And Brunson doesn't really miss games, so all of those would be with their two. They have been elite. Now, if you're a Sixers fan looking for optimism, I don't think they can stop Joel Embiid if Joel Embiid is healthy and up to speed.
And Mitchell Robinson is a little banged up. We don't know what his status is going to be coming into the series. Hartenstein is going to battle him. He still has the advantage in that matchup. But I think Mitchell Robinson he's an important piece for their team generally. I think he's close to the top of the list in this matchup specifically, because we've seen Joel against, like, if Precious Achiuwa has to play minutes as a real big in this series, I think Joel will eat him alive. And he has in the playoffs before.
So I go back to, of course, what we saw against the Sixers. Sixers, again, lost 3 games of the 4. And the Knicks, at one game, I remember they dropped 125 on the Sixers. They really hung a big number on them, as much as we talk about their defense and maybe some low-scoring games. Jalen Brunson was phenomenal. Then you had games where Dante DiVincenzo went off for a stretch. Miles McBride came in, I remember, and had a really good stretch here in Philadelphia where he knocked down about 3-4 threes in the span of 2 minutes against the Sixers and their defense. Looking at Miami and getting all those offensive rebounds that frustrated us in the moment while we were watching it. Josh Hartenstein, also OG Anunoby now on that team.
Well, guess what?
You have to really worry about that with this Knicks team, because they go
Knicks rank in offensive rebounding?
Those loose balls. We're at number 1.
First overall.
Number 1. They got to be number 1.
Yeah, and they get to those loose balls. So we look at it oftentimes when we're watching the Sixers and saying, Get that floorboard. What are you doing? Why are you just staring at the rebound and not being aggressive and going to get it? Diving on the floor for it. Diving out of bounds. Maybe not Joel Embiid, but others can get out of bounds. We know Kyle Lowry and Nick Batum will do that, but you're going to have to give maximum effort against this Tom Thibodeau, Jalen Brunson-led team because that's what they are going to do. They're going to give you their absolute best every time out. And when it comes to their scoring, Dante DiVincenzo had 11 three-pointers in one game to break the franchise record. He got off to a poor start this season shooting from the outside, and then if he didn't break it, he came close to breaking the all-time franchise record of made threes for the regular season. So that's how good the shooting has been. Miles McBride now finding his role with the team. Jalen Brunson being an all-NBA player this season. This is a real matchup. So yes, the Sixers were supposed to be the second or third seed in the Eastern Conference. They are not until they prove otherwise by knocking off this New York Knicks team in a 7-game series. And it's not going to be easy. Joel Embiid, of course, you look at him, if he's healthy, he's the best player on the floor. Very close now is Jalen Brunson because he has elevated his level of play for you to speak about him in that manner. And then it's going to be the everybody else factor that we talked about because you know you're going to get that type of play from New York. What are the others going to do? And this is where we squarely look at Tyrese Maxey against this New York Knicks team and their defense and how you respond to it after having a subpar performance against the Miami Heat in this play-in game. So I'm happy that they're here and that they are playing New York because of the Atlantic Division matchup, because of the rivalry here, because of how many Sixer fans are going to show up at the Garden, how many Knicks fans are going to show up here in Philadelphia. This is going to be a real tough challenge, and it's going to get them, if they're able to get past it, it's going to have them prepared for that next matchup if they are lucky enough to get by this team, because that's how good New York is. So for the people who say you're taking New York lightly, I've already seen where there have been so many people picking the Knicks to knock the Sixers off in 5 or 6 because of Embiid's injury and because of how good the Knicks have been this season and what Jalen Brunson has done to elevate himself into that conversation of one of the best in the NBA. So the Sixers are going to have to show again because of not only this moment now as the 7 seed going into New York as 2 seed, but also they're still fighting against that history of you're not good enough with Joel Embiid to advance any further than the second round. And now we're not in that typical spot of the Sixers being that team that starts their playoff run on their home floor. They're going to have to go into the Garden in a tough, tough environment and win in that place. If they're able to come away with 1 win in those first 2 games, they've done their job to come back here to Philadelphia and see what they do then on their home floor for games 3 and 4. So this one right here is going to be a tough one. This is going to be a fun one.
And by the way, I do see we have some Knicks fans trolling in the chat from their $3,000 a month shoebox apartment in New York City, I'm assuming, who have said things along the lines of, well, the Sixers can't do anything about Brunson. And I already gave my preamble. We've talked about how good he is. Jalen Brunson's numbers are not that good against the Sixers.
40% from the field, 30 from 3. Yep.
He's averaging 6 points below his average for the season against the Sixers. Now, it's averaging almost 8 assists a game. So the game plan clearly so far has been try to turn him into more of a playmaker, take him away, whether you got to double him, trap him, hedge against him, whatever. You want to show him length. I think one of the things we saw in that rock fight that they had at Madison Square Garden that ended, what was the final score of that game? Like 81-77 or something ridiculous along those
78,
lines. Something. It was
and they did
gruesome,
a good job
disgusting basketball. But one of the things that they did that helped was to put somebody like a Kelly Oubre on Brunson and show him length. Throw a Nick Batum at him. I think those are the types of guys they're going to try to use against him just to crowd him, show him the length at the point of attack. Obviously, he's seen basically everything, right? He's the head of the snake there. But I would say I feel okay relatively about their game plan against him and the job that they've done against him so far. I would have more reservations about can they score consistently against this team if Joel Embiid is compromised. You know, OG is one of the most versatile. He probably is the most versatile defender in the league. It's basically him and Bam Adebayo at the top. They're going to move him around. I think they have good options at center. They got a lot of like Josh Hart comes in and it's like he's shot out of a fucking cannon. He's going to kill you on the glass. He's going to make disruptive plays defensively. Like all the Nova guys. The Nova New York team is just really annoying. Like these guys were stars in the Philadelphia area, and now they're all.
To be fair, Jay recruited most of them from the New York area.
It is true, but I'm saying they were here, and whatever. We don't have to get into your cousin and that whole saga. But obviously, if Jalen Brunson has a big series, I'm not going to wake up and be surprised. But they have some things to build on from the regular season, and we'll see if they're able to translate that success into the playoffs.
It's gonna be a fun one, man. This is gonna be a fun one. I like this. I like how it's set up, and it's gonna be a long series. I do believe that. We'll give our prediction at the end, but it will be a long season. So, but after last night, a lot of people were putting their feet up, and they're still putting their feet up today.
Were they choosing chill?
I think they were. Devon? Derek chose chill last night since you weren't here.
Did you?
Yeah.
Derek chose chill. I don't know that I know Derek to choose chill.
It was
a single choose moment of choosing chill. Well, listen, everybody. I know you heard quite a bit about them yesterday, but our friends at Coors Light are here to remind you that there is a better way and a chiller way, that instead of watching a game in the first half and saying the Sixers season is over and they're going to trade Joel Embiid, and they should, and I'm tired of watching this team and I can't do it anymore, you're burning jerseys, you can choose chill with an ice cold Coors Light, because when those mountains turn blue on the bottles and cans, it's that perfect temperature for you to reach into the fridge, have an ice cold one during a playoff basketball game. I don't get to drink during the games or really after the games either. I'm working late nights. I'm in the locker rooms talking to everybody, working with these guys during a lot of regular season road games. But when you get home after a long night, you're unwinding, had a stressful day, there are times when nothing will do except for an ice cold beer. It is such a great feeling to walk home, walk into that front door, open the fridge, and see that Coors Light offers you a cold layered, cold filtered, cold packaged, refreshing beverage for a smooth finish. Mountain cold refreshment. I know we're a long way away from having to worry about the good people in Colorado and a playoff meeting. But
see you in June.
If
Denver.
we ever end up there for a playoff meeting, I don't know what they will do. I will certainly choose chill.
Trusted P said he had 8 last night. You chose chill 8 times.
You chose very chill, my friend. So when you choose to rise above it all, choose chill, choose Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door with Instacart by going to CoorsLight.com/PHLY basketball. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. And just like Abe Froman is the sausage king of Chicago, I am the beverage king of PHLY Sixers.
That's right.
Our friends at Olipop have another great drink for you, a series of drinks, one might say. A new kind of soda that is available online and available in almost 30,000 retailers nationwide, including the most recent launch at all Wawa stores. You can scoop a classic root beer or a strawberry vanilla. Highly recommend that one at a Wawa near you. Told you guys many times, drink soda quite often in my life. I haven't been a big coffee guy throughout my life, so the caffeine, the sugar from soda is part of what would get me through days. But as I get older, as it starts to hit the gut, your teeth, everything else, a little bit harder, you start looking for ways to protect your health and still get exactly what you want from soda. Olipop helps me do that. It is much lower in sugar than conventional sodas. The vintage cola has just 2 grams of sugar compared to a regular Coca-Cola, which has, drumroll please, 39 grams of sugar in a regular Coca-Cola. That is a big no-no compared to the 2 to 5 grams you're getting from natural sources in an Olipop. And Olipop has plenty of classic flavors: vintage cola, classic root beer, orange squeeze, classic grape, strawberry vanilla, cream soda, cherry cola, grape. I can make things up. Cherry vanilla. There's all kinds of stuff we've got here. We've got a whole Olipop fridge in the other room. We got to get one in here as well. I know we have a lot of fans of Olipop in the chat. If you want to become the newest fan of Olipop, use the code PHLY20 for 20% off of their next Olipop order. The discount only applies to one-time orders, not to subscription orders. Olipop is sold online at drinkolipop.com and on Amazon, and it's available in almost 30,000 retailers nationwide, including Wawa, Target, Sprouts, Wegmans, ShopRite, and GoPuff.
I'm laughing at the back and forth here in the chat between the Knicks fans and the Sixers. They came to the right place as far as the the fans they want to go after here. I'm seeing Martian Lynch, New York Rats, big as shit.
I also do see Big Nick Energy is basically saying we can unite on this idea. Yeah. Miami was due for some misfortune, right?
Yeah.
Miami's had a golden horseshoe shoved up their ass for like the last half decade. So it's about time somebody else got a random role player 6-3 game to win again, not a playoff game, a postseason game. So Big Nick Energy, we don't have to agree on much. We can certainly agree on that.
And also, Knicks fans coming into the chat, let me say this. You don't have to say Philly cheesesteaks. We know what they are. You just call them a cheesesteak.
Actually, that's a great public service announcement. Understand. Any New Yorkers, and not that we're recommending you come down here, I'd love to keep you guys in your city and vice versa. If you come down here and you go anywhere that is advertising it as a Philly cheesesteak, run. That is not a place that you want to get a cheesesteak from. It should say on a board with magnetic letters on a white background, cheesesteak. That's all it should say. No or Philly.
Written.
Or handwritten would be even better.
Right. Absolutely. That's when you know it's a pretty good sandwich. But to see the back and forth here is pretty hilarious and watching. Khalil said it's not a Philly cheesesteak and Philly dummies. I love it. Yeah, come on in, Knicks fans. We'll take all the conversation, and our good folks have our back. We still have a lot to get to, but we do have some super chats that we want to throw in here as well. So, Bree, let's get to a couple of these super chats. Mr. Rudy Poo, been through this rodeo, JoJo, more compromised than expected, and it's only getting worse. Be prepared for some of the nastiest basketball.
It's going to be ugly.
The last part. Yeah,
it's going to be very, very ugly. Look, I think there's three things at play here. One is whether or not he was just the layoff hurt him a little bit. We've talked about that with Joe a lot. It's happened in the past. Two, how much the brace is impacting him. Certainly doesn't seem like the most comfortable thing in the world.
He fidgeted with it quite a bit. I don't know how much. I know they showed a pregame reel on the broadcast, but even throughout the game, if they didn't show it on TV,
what was the one that we pointed out when he was messing with his knee? And then he went and sat down. When he came out the game,
And then three, what percentage is he actually at? And I think all three of those factor in somewhat. I think he will get better as the series goes on. I think one of the nice things about a first-round series is that those games tend to be pretty spaced out, so that should work in his favor a little bit. But, yeah, it's a concern. Like, you need Joe. He's not going to be at 100%. Nobody's expecting that. You're probably not going to see that for the rest of the season. You need him in the, 85 working towards 90% range. I'm not sure he was there last night.
Yeah, and now I will say, and we talked about this on the post-game show some last night. I thought it was very important for everybody to see him rally down the stretch of that game. Like, we can say, hey, there's a cap on how good they can be in the playoffs if Joe is at X percent. Like, let's just say he's at 75% for the sake of argument. But there have been a lot of games similar to that one last night where Joel didn't have it early. Nick Nurse actually said in a book that he's written that their strategy as the Toronto Raptors in the playoffs against Joel Embiid was to hound him early, basically saying he would fold if he couldn't get going early in games. And that looked exactly like one of those performances last night where whether he's fatigued, whether he's hurt, whether the shot just wasn't going down, looked like he had absolutely nothing. And then the fourth quarter rolls around. He's their leading scorer for the quarter, hits a couple of monster threes, big offensive rebound, the most important assist to Kelly, some great defensive plays around the basket. If he's not going to be 100%, the only thing that I ever ask of him, of any player who's going to be out there, leave everything you have on that floor. I think it's clear that he's doing that. And frankly, also was just making quicker reads in the second half. Like, that is such a critical part, certainly against the zone, but against good defensive teams in general. Where good offense goes to die is in one guy's hands with nobody moving, everybody else standing around doing nothing. So I was glad to see, set aside everything else, glad to see Joel playing faster. Absolutely. And I thought the rest of the team followed suit.
But playing faster and under control, because when he was playing faster early, it got him in trouble
Right.
And that's where the turnovers came from.
Yeah. There's Kelly Oubre fast and Tyrese Maxey fast. That's not just about how quickly you can move with the ball.
Yep. Your mind is working too fast, too. Mr. Rudy Poo, his last one. We got to get to that one, the very last one. Skechers versus Tim's. Fellas, how can I fight back?
Listen,
Joel
that's a
Embiid
losing
with the
battle
Skechers.
as far as
You're
I'm
not gonna
concerned.
win that one. Well, actually, Mr. Rudy Poo, Julius Randle, where's the Skechers? The same pair that Joel Embiid is now sporting. Julius Randle and Terrence Mann are the other two representing the new basketball brand from Skechers. So throw that back
Sketcher
at
gang.
him, Mr. Rudy Poo.
Actually, that's a great segue. Do we think the Randall loss hurts them in this series? Because look, he's an important player generally. Yeah. He has also had some mighty struggles in playoff series before. So I'm caught between two worlds a little bit.
I think he's been gone long enough where they have adjusted to what their style of play is now without him. And if he did come back, it was a bonus for him. It was more about getting OG Anunoby because that one seemed to be more realistic than Julius Randle. So in my opinion, I don't think it hurts them as much as, of course, we have to talk about him because he's their other all-star. But they have since changed their style of play more geared around Jalen Brunson and not having to worry about that back to the basket, getting enough touches for Julius Randle.
If Brunson hadn't taken this leap, then I would think that loss would be bigger. But with Brunson out, I think you want him facilitating more of the offense anyway. Randle sort of gets in the way of that. I've always never been huge on Julius on either end of the floor, not relative to his reputation at least. So yeah, certainly like talent being out has an impact, but I don't think it's nearly as much as you would expect.
What do you think Julius Randle's career playoff field goal percentage is?
42.
Go lower.
37.
34.4.
Holy shit.
Now, granted, that's
small.
I guess it's very small. It's 15 games. So it's
even still.
But he in 5 games against Atlanta in 21, he shot 29.8% from the floor. Last year in the first round against Cleveland, 33.8. Second round against Miami, 41.1. So he's trending upward. Maybe he's getting better every series, and eventually he'll shoot 100% from the field over 7 games.
It's only 15 games, but it is 241 field goal attempts because he gets them up. Like that's real low. That's real low.
All right, let's get to a couple of more here that we have on the super chat. Bill says, any news that Maxey may have a concussion after taking that elbow last night from Jimmy Butler in the first quarter?
We were, half joking about it. He played like he had one for a little bit. Unfortunately, just looked dazed and understandably so.
It looked like
right?
he got hit here, though. I'd be surprised.
And we didn't hear anything from the team or from Maxey. Tyrese was actually the first guy, after Nick Nurse, but the first player to come up to the podium and speak last night.
But didn't he speak when he did get the concussion?
He did.
He did speak.
And as I've been telling you guys from the arena all year, half the time we get an update that's like, oh yeah, this guy's progressing and he's feeling good, and we think he's getting closer, and then 3 months later, it's like, oh yeah, by the way, Robert Covington's never playing basketball again. So it's I take what they say through the updates with a grain of salt, and that's especially true this time of year when everybody's protecting injury information like they have the nuclear codes.
My favorite is when Tyrese or Joel get injured, they're like, oh, I haven't had a chance to talk to medical yet. Bullshit. That was the first thing you did when you got in the locker room.
I would also say I wish they would just do the hockey style of injury reporting at this point, where it's lower body injury. Just be more ridiculous about it than you already are being.
Ernest Peterson on the super chat. Thanks, Ern. Appreciate it. Chicken is the real MVP. After those 2 missed free throws from Caleb Martin. Also, Buddy is a good driver, and when he actually attacks, it opens up the floor. He has a habit of kicking out for no reason. He had that bad pass to try to find, I think it was Oubre in the corner where he threw it right out of bounds when he did drive to the middle of the floor. And again, that's where the panic really set in, where they couldn't figure out the zone in the first half. But he settled down in the second half. I think he was 3 for 8 overall from the floor, but he was better than that. He blew a bad one in transition going Kyle's way in the second half.
If they had lost that game.
That place was going to go. That one, and then we got on, what was the technical that they had for the delay game?
Delay
game. What was that?
That was horse shit.
So
what was the delay game before that to give them?
I didn't see the first one. I thought the second one was bad, but I couldn't tell at the arena who they actually called that on, because it looked like on the second one, it looked like Batum actually swatted at the ball a little bit, but it barely moved. And I was like, maybe that.
Well, somebody then hit it back to the refs.
But then Buddy Hield, ball comes to him, and he passes it directly to the ref. I don't know how you call delay a game in that situation. And to your point, that could have been the difference between a win and a loss.
Kyle, we were losing our mind, and we were like, that 1 point.
I do know me. I don't like to get on refs. I think people complain about it way too. You just don't call that in that situation.
There's a reason that the PHLY Sixers Twitter account posted a photo of Tony Brothers being the crew chief last night, hours before the game.
And we did shout out your dad, since we were talking officials. We did shout out your dad.
I actually did not get. This is the upset of last night. I didn't get a single ref text from my dad, which either means he was too nervous to text or I don't know. That's the only thing it could mean.
Yeah. Bree, what was the early part of, since we got on the Buddy Hield talk a little bit there, what was the early part of that super chat from our friend there, Ern? He said, of course, the chicken was the real MVP. All right, that was it. And the Buddy Hield play. But that was the start of it, man. Those two missed free throws from Caleb Martin. Who knew? Who knew?
I still miss the Frosty freeze out personally. I will say
Covington
I have more motivation to go to get a Frosty than 5 chicken nuggets personally.
I also just feel a little more comfortable giving them promotion than I do, but that's a different conversation.
Yeah, that's it. But plus, when you 5 chicken nuggets, then you kind of force. I can't get just 5 nuggets. I have to buy something else.
I can just get a
Frosty and be cool with the ice cream that you get. All right, our last one from Mr. Rudy Poo, and then we'll talk some more matchup things in the series. These games really are going to be decided by the officiating. We know JoJo is a grifter, but Brunson a low-key foul baiter as well. And watching Jalen all the way back to Villanova, he knows how to get calls. He's very, very, very crafty with that, and he's done the same thing in the league. But not only that, defensively, he's very good at also finding his spots to take those charges, just like Kyle Lowry. Yeah. So you have to be careful when Joel does his move, and then that Euro step you get, and especially with his being that elongated Euro step, giving guys time to jump in and take that charge. Tobias Harris, the same thing. When he does his Euro step, the officiating is going to be a big piece here because Joel gets to the free throw line and so does Jalen Brunson.
You're making salient points here, Devon. Our guy, Marshawn Lynch, has just been on an absolute rampage in the chat today. Just
he posted it twice.
Every single comment that I see is just him taking a dump on New York for one reason or another, which, look, everything has been mostly respectful.
His last two are hilarious.
And I will say this, I might get my Philadelphia card revoked. I personally love being able to go to New York City. And I love the city.
Oh, man.
I wish we had as efficient a subway system as they have there. But anyway. Yeah. What were you talking about?
He loves the party. He's talking about the party there. No, just the foul baiting from both Joel and Jalen.
It's two masters of the craft, right? And it was after, Jimmy Butler
so
is another
Sixer fans,
one.
Get ready. When you embrace when Joel does it, but when another player does it, not even as much as Jalen gets the calls, be ready because he's going to go to the free throw line anywhere from 6 up to 10, maybe even more when he gets those calls. So be ready. Be ready. And you can't be a hypocrite about it because Joel does it.
My only thing ever with this stuff, especially in the playoffs, I don't care as long as it's consistent, as long as they're calling the same things, and that's the thing I would worry about if you're trying to invite a ref angle in here is, does the little guy get more of the benefit of the doubt than the big guy? Joel obviously gets one of the best whistles in the league. Or at the very least, can our
little guy get a little bit of benefit of the doubt as well?
It's also true. It's a fair point by you, Mr. Bodner. But that's what I would worry about to some extent because I do think Joel's free throws drop in the playoffs in general, and that's not super surprising, right? The officials allow them to play more physical. It's a more defense-oriented game. I get all that. So we'll see. I am not going to think that much about the officials on a general level, though.
Nah. I saw Nick Fan coming at the Iverson statue. So Nick Fan, I can't remember what your name is, but again, you got to be here to understand it. So we'll just ignore that. By the way, Winona said, Kyle let you know that Winona will be there.
All right.
Yeah. So no, no.
No. Keep your eye out for me. I don't know if maybe I'll send you a DM and say, look for this color shirt or something like that. We can say hello.
All right. If Kelly Oubre is the X factor for us, not only for the game last night, but also for the postseason, he was all right last night. He had his moments. He's definitely played much better in the second half. The other one that we need to talk about, because they're going to need him in this series, and if they don't, will Nick Nurse have enough in him to pull him when it's time to get him out of the game? And that's Tobias Harris. Derek, we talked about him last night. His 5 offensive rebounds, we felt they were all 5 of his misses that he got to those rebounds. But where does he factor into this series now when we look at the 8-man rotation, go to campaign for that 9? But Tobias Harris, how does he factor into this?
Well, I think he's still going to start. I'm not expecting him to come off the bench.
Agreed.
But it is, encouraging that Nick will bench him for the final, 5-6 minutes of that game last night if the flow of the game dictates it. I think he will have look, this is the playoffs. I think Nick will do what needs to be done if there is a game where he's not playing well. But I do think he's going to start. I don't think he's going to change it up now, in part because there's just a chemistry built between that group, in part because he probably believes that's the best way to keep Tobias Harris engaged and give him a chance to make an imprint on the game. But yeah, I think if there's another situation like that presents itself, I wouldn't be shocked if you see Tobias.
And Kyle Lowry was the one to come in and be the closer for Tobias Harris. What do you think?
Well, are we going to just ignore the potential burner account scandal that was...
No, not at all. Not at all.
Look, I don't think it's Tobias, to be clear.
And also, it's clear somebody who wants to support Tobias, but I need a little more evidence of that to make an accusation, because we do have a history of burner accounts, so there is a burden of proof that,
there is a burden of proof required. But
there is a Twitter account out there that people believe is connected to somebody or run by someone connected to Tobias. It's on a little bit flimsy evidence, though.
And by the way, I looked at the comments after you sent it, and a lot of people were like, all right, Tobias, knock it off. So they believe that it was, or at least having fun.
I will say the tweet's being deleted and then the account going private. It's a little bit suspect.
It's a little sketchy. I will say this. I think the hardest thing Nurse had to do has already been done, which is to rip the Band-Aid off and say you're not closing this game. Because once it happens one time, that was the paradigm shift, right? We have operated in a space where for a half decade, Tobias Harris has been nailed on as a closer. There may have been, I don't know, 1 or 2 games in the 5 years that actually was relevant basketball that he didn't play in, and I can't even think of them off the top of my head. So that was the tough decision. Now, I get that he was protecting Tobias to some degree, both just from the media, but also his confidence and what have you. But Nick Nurse coming out and saying the biggest lie of his lifetime, that he was tired. It's like, bro, he played less than 33 minutes. He didn't even hit his season average. And I get it was a tough, physical, more competitive game than the regular season, but this is not a guy who needs to be on that tight of a pitch count.
Not to mention, he normally plays minutes.
Especially
and doesn't look
playoffs.
Tired. Right, absolutely, yeah.
So that would give me some pause, but look, it's a press conference. It's not that big a deal. I think having done that, I don't think Nick will be shy about doing it in the future. I think now that, look, this was Tobias's contract year and a lot of other guys' contract years, and everybody had their chances to prove, hey, this is what I deserve next year, whether it's here or anybody else. This is what my role should be in the playoffs. Tobias did not show any of us a whole hell of a lot for that 2-month period that Joel was out for. And so now when it's put up or shut up time, I don't think Nick Nurse looks at it any other way than what is giving me the best possible chance to win at this moment. We see that in the way he sets his team up defensively, right? He had Kelly playing full court pressure on guys last night to try to junk up the game. I thought that worked really successfully, and
got a backcourt violation.
They frankly haven't done that a whole lot throughout the season. That was something they just let's do it. And so apply that logic to Tobias, and if he's struggling, if Lowry's struggling, any of the role players are struggling, because that's what Tobias is, right? He's not the third star. He's one of their role players. He might be making a lot more money than these other guys, but he's in that same category as a bunch of these other players.
He's a role player now. That's it.
So good on Nick Nurse for recognizing that, for playing it in that way. And I certainly think if we're in a similar spot Saturday night, Monday, whatever point in this series, I think he will do the same thing.
And Tobias Harris will make it easy on Nick Nurse if he has a good performance where he can leave him in there as well. But when it goes in that way, Nick Nurse did the right thing, got it out of the way early for the play-in game, and now we can see that going forward if that is, in fact, the case. Final one before our predictions, and we get out of here. The coaching matchup. What are you seeing, Derek? We often talk about Erik Spoelstra being the best in the league. Nick Nurse is very high in the rankings of coaches and how good they are. Tom Thibodeau has done a heck of a job with that Knicks team and turning things around. How do you see this matchup?
Well, I mean, look, Tibbs has an incredible track record. Certainly as a defensive mind, he was very innovative back in Boston and all of his stops, really.
Chicago, yeah.
That being said, I do appreciate the creativity of Nick. In terms of a 7-game series, I trust Nick to make the adjustments. I think Nick is probably a little more of a well-rounded coach. Mm-hmm. So I think they all have their strengths and weaknesses, but I'm comfortable with where the Sixers are in this one.
What do you think, Kyle? Because I know how strongly you felt about Erik Spoelstra in this matchup against Nick Nurse, and Nurse got the better of him in the second half. But as far as Tom Thibodeau in the 7-game series?
I don't mean this in a defamatory way. I think Tibbs is a what you see is what you get type of guy, right?
Yeah.
Like they have a very firm and strong identity. I think he's similar in a way to Erik Spoelstra, where they are no nonsense type of guys. They are, when you join a team that is coached by Tibbs, you know exactly what you're signing up for. There is no mystery. You can't show up to first day of training camp, and when he's barking at you or asking you to do this slide drill, or you got to do this or you're not playing, like that is who Tibbs is. And the weird thing is, or the funny thing is, he's a super nice guy from my experiences with him and what you hear around the league. And he also, I think, as much as any coach in the league protects his players in public, like I can't remember him dressing somebody down. He'll certainly scream at somebody from the sideline, right? But you're talking about publicly or in a press conference and all that, like
ice.
We're going to hear a lot of raspy ice throughout this series. But I have a lot of respect for him. Like,
good coach.
There was definitely a period there where his star fell and people were like, well, he's a one-trick pony. He just plays his guys 1,000 minutes and he runs them into the ground, blah, 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 blah. It's part of the reason that Jimmy Butler's next contract was such a concern when he's here in Philadelphia. Part of why people were happy at the time to let him go to Miami. But he's proven across – look, he went to Minnesota, not a place where they win and win in there. He went to New York, a program there that's – they've been about as relevant as the Sixers have been in my lifetime, which is to say not. And they're now a legit team. He's molded a bunch of these guys into real strong role players around the head of the snake and Brunson. Brunson has gone to the next level under him. And you give most of the credit to Jalen for that. But Thibodeau and the way they've set up there has been able to facilitate that. So I respect the hell out of him. I personally think Nurse is a better coach for a playoff series because I think he's more adaptable and flexible.
Yep.
But I would say something to always caution about in the playoffs. We brought this up a lot when Brett Brown was here, and certainly when Doc was here. There is a fine line at times between doing what got you there and panicking. Like where's the middle ground between we need to change some things, but we don't want to lose our identity. I think Tibbs leans toward we stick to what we do and we just need to execute and play better. And that's certainly, like, I think that's a fair argument for a coach of a very good 2-seed type team to make. But I think if the Sixers can find some ways to attack them and find some ways to slow down Brunson, I'm not sure he's going to have the most creative answers to respond to.
He's a high-end version of Doc.
Yeah. Without the excuse making, too. Tibbs will tell you when it's his fault and they deserve to lose and whatnot.
All right, let's get to it. Prediction time. We're off on Friday, folks, so we have to throw our predictions in here now on the show. So, Kyle, we'll start with you, man. Get the predictions in here for this 7-game series. The number 2 seed New York Knicks hosting the Philadelphia 76ers, the 7 seed now, beginning in New York on Saturday.
I'm going to keep it simple. Sixers in 6.
I'll say
taking them.
Sixers in 7, which is my way of saying these teams two are very evenly matched. I hope it doesn't go 7 because you never want to have a game 7 on the road. We don't have to look too far back in the Sixers franchise history to point out why that would be. But I think the Sixers are the slightly better team, so I'll pick them in 7, but it's very close. Like the way New York has played since that trade has been really good. Really, really good. We said it before the Miami game. This is the second most dangerous team left in the Eastern Conference after the Giannis injury. Yeah, they're in the first round now.
They're a very, very good, worthy opponent. I'm really excited for this one. Devon, what do you got?
If you look at the other side, some might say the Sixers are the second most dangerous team in the Eastern Conference.
Oh, some might also argue that the most dangerous team in the Sixers is the Sixers.
Correct. We did talk about that one earlier in the week. I'm going 6 as well, and I think it's important for them to, if they do close it out and win the series in 6, that they do so at home. That's the only way to do it, but I
don't think they're winning an MSG in Game 7.
No, so
personally,
yeah, I think 6 and 6. I think they split this first 2 games, Saturday and Monday, whatever one it may be. But I do think Sixers and 6 is going to be a hard fought. I don't think we see too many blowout games. My question is also with Tyrese Maxey, we see any 40-point eruptions from him or Brunson to match Brunson's 40-point outing when we get one from Tyrese Maxey somewhere in that high 30s as well. So I think Sixers and 6 in this one, and it's gonna be a really, really fun, really entertaining series. Again, this is great to have the rivalry back where they're both good now at the same time. It's really good.
Legitimately might be the first time in our lifetime.
I think the last time they played a playoff series, the Sixers were playing in the Spectrum.
Yeah.
So, like, that's a long time ago.
This is great.
I'm very excited for this.
Yeah. So, I'm also excited about the chat going forward for the next 2 weeks because after seeing all of this is lively. And, man, this is going to be some fun stuff to talk about. After Game 1 on Saturday, of course, Sixers in New York to take on the Knicks. 6 o'clock start time. Is it a ESPN game or I think it's ESPN first game and TNT on the second game.
6:15 start time?
6:15 start time, somewhere around there on Saturday for game number 1. So this one should be fun, man. Everybody embrace
done my work earlier too.
Enjoy it.
What a win for me. This has all been. We always root for us before anybody else.
This is going to be a really, really good, fun series. All right, let's say our goodbyes to everybody. Kyle, who do we have?
I gotta say goodbye to these New Yorkers too. No, listen, I do appreciate the liveliness of the chat, and
it was mostly respectful too.
It was a lot of very funny back and forth talking about chopped cheese.
I think I only blocked one of them. I think I only blocked one of them.
First of all, first shout out goes to my guy Martian Lynch.
He says bodegas are trash.
He's going out on a heater. And we will say free Max B once again. Shout out also
so uncomfortable.
To Flex Hoops, to Khalil Wilson, Jay the Jungle, my girl
Jay?
Winona, Alex McElroy, Shannon Nixon, who is a Knicks fan, but we won't judge you for that.
Welcome,
Public
Shan.
Enemy #1, Money Mar.
In a chat full of Knicks fans, he's still public enemy number 1.
Enemy number 1. Ray Burrows, Ash Monroe, Big Nick
what
Energy.
Up, Ash?
Trolling while he or she said he works at night, so he's spending his day trolling opposing fan bases.
Thank you.
Interesting use of your time,
Big
my friend,
Nick
but thanks for coming through.
Kind of copied off of Nick Foles, but we'll leave that there.
Lou Boogie, X-Man, Luke
what
P,
up, X?
Chris D, our guy Al, the 2-minute warning.
What up, Al?
We love that. Knicks will be 2026 NBA champs. Well, guess that means you're losing this series, buddy. Tough break for you, Keith Baumgart. Who else we got in here? It's a lot of so many people are spamming the chat. I'm seeing the same names. Anpu Mines, thank you for being here.
Anpu, what up?
Who are our super chatters today?
We have Mr. Rudy Poo.
Mr. Rudy Poo, Bill, and Ernest
That's a
Peterson.
Triple poo.
We have our friend,
man.
friend of the show, Val Host.
What up, Val?
Thank you for stopping through. I saw Gavin. I saw Will.
What up, Gavin?
The plaid unicorn.
Oh,
Rick Morse.
Rick, what up?
Guys, this is too many, just a lot of jokes in here today from the back and forth. But thank you all.
Unicorn. I like it.
Thank you all. By the way, shout out to Rite Aid. I'm going to need to deal with this pollen allergy sooner rather than later. If you haven't already, everybody, hit that subscribe button. Hit the bell icon so you get notifications each and every time we go live. Hit the thumbs up button
Sebastian
to banish
Telfair
these
was a bust.
MFers from New York. back to their shoebox apartments where they came from. And by the way, while we're on the way out, we're going to have a lot of diehard content. If you are not an allphly.com diehard already, you get access to exclusive content, access to the Discord, free shirt or a free hat once a year, discounts on events, all kinds of other special stuff, guys. Sign up today or sign up tomorrow at the very least. We will see you Saturday night, Sixers-Knicks at the Garden.
How about that?
We'll see you then.
Thanks, Bree.
We all silly like the mayor.